Sadia, can I pass over to you?
Yes, thank you so much, Mark. So yeah, I'm Sadia Akram. I am the Programme Director for FODIP, which is a registered UK charity. And our focus really, it's called Forum for Discussion of Israel and Palestine. It says it in the name really, where its remit is really to host and facilitate sensitively interfaith dialogue on the Israeli-Palestinian issue within and between Jews, Christians, Muslims, and others in the UK to promote cooperation through dialogue, and also work with civil society consulting as an associate. So I'm really pleased to be here today. Thank you, Mark, and thank you so much, Inob, for hosting today's webinar, particularly for using this opportunity to highlight the rising concerns among many of us and faith and civil society organisations about the development and expansion of Islamophobia that we're witnessing, resulting really in anti-Muslim hatred in and across Europe and beyond, I think. We are very, very fortunate and extremely delighted to have us join with us today, Dr. Farid Hafez and Dr. Anas Bayrakli. I'm not sure if I've pronounced your name correctly, and apologies if I have not. Both co-editors, and we have two co-authors with us today, Amani Hassani from Denmark and Anna Arden from Sweden. Again, really, really delighted to have you here to present their latest volume of the European Islamophobia Report, which has been published by the Leopold Weiss Institute. I guess this is probably the 6th edition, so I think the first edition may have been in 2015, I might be wrong, but I'm sure you'll correct me. So you're all very, very welcome. The first half hour, as Mark said, will be Farid and Anas, Anna and Iman talking through what their findings are. So I'm gonna hand over to Dr. Farid Hafez, who was born in Austria, a political scientist and now based in the USA, visiting professor of international studies at Williams College and non-resident senior researcher at Georgetown University's Bridge Initiative of the School of Foreign Service. He is the founding editor of the German-English Islamophobia Studies Yearbook since 2010, and the co-editor of the annual European Islamophobia Report, which we will discuss more today, which has been going since 2015 and has covered more than 30 countries. So over to you, Farid.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Inor, for facilitating this event today. Thank you, Mark and Sadia and everybody else who is on the team here for making this happen today. Basically what we are doing here is something that we have been doing now since, I think it's now 8 years now. So this is the 7th report that has been just published today. And just to give like kind of a background information, like looking back into 2014 and how the world and Europe was back then, we very often, when we would go give talks, and especially when we were speaking to NGOs, anti-racist NGOs, Muslim NGOs that were speaking out against and about Islamophobia, we realized there was always this issue. If you want to give yourself a voice and criticize something, there was always this idea of coming from the political side, from the policymakers, those empowered, MPs. Well, where is the data? So it was a very simple idea back then in 2015 when Enes and me met, that we said, okay, let's create the data. Because obviously you have several European institutions that have been producing reports about Islamophobia once in a while, every 5-6 years or something like that. But we said, okay, let's create something that is continuously providing information about the state of the art and the development of Islamophobia based on an annual report. So this is how the idea was born. So if you look back and look to all the different editions from 2015 to 2022, 21 now, what you will see is that every and each report basically has the same structure. But you can clearly see in our introduction on Europe and the overall picture that we are painting that there is some emphasis that we pay on certain specific developments. So looking back, for instance, to last year's report, which was the report where we put Emmanuel Macron on the cover page, the first time that we did like one specific figure that we tried to highlight as a symbol of what was going on in 2021, we emphasized that there is a huge problem in terms of how some hawkish policies have been implemented to basically destroy the Muslim civil society, and with the example of France. Now, this year, we put the image of Sebastian Kutz, because again, we are seeing that institutionalized Islamophobia coming from the centers of power have been crucial in shaping the destiny and the lives of so many Muslim people, especially the organized Muslim community and or those who are vocal and about Islamophobia in specific. So this is kind of, the background. For this year, we were happy to have 35 scholars and colleagues from civil societies to work on 27 European countries. We had better days when we covered, I think 34 was the utmost number of countries that we had covered in the past. And there is obviously a lot of things going on when we talk about Islamophobia. So let's start with the good news, okay? So the good news is I believe that the United Nations has unanimously accepted a resolution to declare the 15th of March, which is the day when the Christchurch attack happened, as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia. And I think that is a huge success. Why? Because on a symbolic level, and we know that from a lot of European countries, we have those who still deny the very existence of Islamophobia, who try, when you speak out against Islamophobia, to tell you, well, this notion, this terminology is not really defined, so why should we really use that? Having these kinds of arguments in order not to have the real discussion about the things that are on the table that really shape Muslim lives on a daily basis. So I think this is something good, something we should also work with as civil society organizations, as academics, to draw on that success in the United Nations. And I think the important aspect, again, is it has been accepted unanimously. At the same time, what we see, if you go to the website of the United Nations, the only 3 actors that were really discussing this issue, one was India, and I think there is no, I don't have to explain why, if you look at what the current Modi regime is doing to Muslims in India. But the other 2 actors were France and the representative of the European Union. And I think that again tells you something, right? As to how much top leaders in Europe have problems. And again, I think it very much shows that France had been at the forefront of not protecting Muslims against Islamophobia, but really institutionalizing Islamophobia. So that we also put that in the context of a general trend that we see in Europe. So we have quoted a lot from the University of Gothenburg's research called The Varieties of Democracy, which has found that generally speaking, there is a lot of European countries, especially in the East, but not only in the East, have been have major issues when it comes to what they call liberal democracy. One country where I come from, Austria, has been even downgraded from being a liberal democracy to becoming an electoral democracy. But even in Western European countries, this research project has highlighted that there is a slight increase in domestic government disinformation, on behalf of Western European governments. And I think we have to see this whole trend of an increasing Islamophobia as being part and parcel of a larger trend of a growing authoritarian and autocratic policies that we can observe throughout Europe in general. All right. So I'm coming to my last point, which is again why we chose Sebastian Kutz as on the cover of this year's report. We see that there is a number of what we call the champions of institutionalized Islamophobia, which is, according to our analysis and the analysis that was provided by authors like Amani and Anna and others in the respective country reports, there are a number of countries that are pushing these agendas and trying to hegemonize it on a European level. They try to basically convince other European countries that this is the right way to treat Muslims, to put it very simply. And that is, amongst others, besides France, which I've already mentioned, it is Austria. And we have given a lot of evidence here in terms of why that is the case. You can see there are attempts on a European level, like for instance, last October, we had the Vienna Forum on Countering Segregation and Extremism in integration in Vienna, where people from Denmark, France, and unfortunately also the EU counterterrorism coordinator participated, which was basically an attempt, as Rab put it in her own words, quote unquote, to make Vienna a competent center against political Islam. Now, the problem with political Islam here is not so much that it is about a problematic phenomenon, but political Islam is basically any kind of Muslim visibility in the public space. Like the Austrian government has banned the hijab, has closed mosques, and has made the infamous Operation Luxor, a police raid, the largest police raid in the history of modern Austria, to which I also fell victim. All of that being presented as a means to fight political Islam. So it is not really about something that is violent, but rather very explicitly all of these policymakers and the theologians and the extremism experts that are trying to legitimize these policies, they very explicitly say this is not about violence, it is about what comes before violence, it is about thought, it is about ideas that we are tackling. And I think the last measure is one of the laws that has been implemented here in Austria, which was to basically make political Islam a criminal offense that has been part of a larger package of so-called anti-terrorism legislation that again has curtailed a lot of civil liberties that we have in countries like Austria. And all of these tendencies, I think, are very, very problematic and show us, like, you know, where this whole journey leads some countries who opt for fighting political Islam in the name of anti-terrorism. So I will stop here and give the floor to Enes to speak about some other general trends that we have been observing in Europe.